In this section we will work on the shadow box, and the pieces for the shadow box are all cut out of medium weight chipboard, and it's on the page 3 of 3 at the top. It lists all of the pieces that are needed for the shadow box. I have them all cut out and laid out here in front of me. And then there is one sheet from the templates, and it's called Shadow Box Layout, and it tells what sizes we need for each of the interior boxes. Then at some point we'll need decorative paper, but I haven't determined what I'll use for that yet. But we'll need paper to go on the insides of the boxes and to go on the outside as well. So I'm going to start by making my interior boxes, and each box here tells what sizes you need for both the sides, the top and bottom, and the back. So let's start here with box 1, and we need 2 of our 1 3/8 by 1 5/8 pieces. Get these out of my way here. Those will be my sides, and for the top and bottom, 2 at 1 7/8 by 1 5/8. And then the back is a 1 3/8 by 1 7/8 inch piece. So we'll start by just making a little simple butt joint box. And I'm going to put all of my measurements on the outside so that my interior of my box is nice and clean. So just alternate the sides and use butt joints to put them together. Now I've cut my joining strips with a 45 degree cut here at the top, and I'm going to align them all facing the front of the box so that when I go to put finishing strips on, I'll be able to miter those nicely into these corners. So I'll go ahead and join these 4, and then I'll be back. And then once I have my 4 sides joined together, I'll just at the back and the side without the mitered joins on the joining strips, I'll just run a little bead of glue along all 4 sides, and then I can pop my back piece in, and again I'll put my writing on the outside, and that should fit snugly right down inside of there. And you can put some pressure and make sure you have that box square, and you can put a rubber band around it if you'd like, and then allow that to dry. And then I'll just proceed to make the rest of the boxes following the same procedure and the directions here for what pieces to use for the sides, top, bottom, and backs. Once we have all of our boxes made, we'll go ahead and lay them out just like we have in the layout here. And then we can glue them together, and the inner box assembly, and that's what I'm calling this set of boxes, when you put it together, should measure 6.5 by 8. So just use your gridded mat, and I'll probably put this together in sections, maybe this outside section so that I can build it kind of standing up straight like that, and just kind of build it in sections and put it together, and your finished dimensions, as I said, should be 6.5 by 8. So I'll go ahead and get that glued up. Before we put the 2 sides on the shadow box, I want to take the right side piece and mark it for some brads. And the reason for that is so that we can make a better join between the shadow box and the unit I'm calling the side piece, which goes on the outside of the house. and that's what allows us to pull the shadow box out. And so we're going to take our right side piece here, and then also from the cutting guide on page 2 of 3, down here under side piece where it says side piece front or back, we'll just have one of those pieces. I've marked this one the back, and I've got that one out. I've also marked inside on here so that I know that this is the side that I want it. When I build that actual side piece unit, this will face towards the inside. So the first thing I'm going to do is to line the bottoms of these two and just temporarily attach them with some of my light low-tack tape. And that is going to allow us to exactly mark the vertical distance, so they will both be exactly the same. So I have the unit aligned here on my grid mat, and I'm going to mark a line 1 inch up from the bottom across both pieces, and then I'll come up 4 inches from the bottom and mark another line. And then finally at 7 inches up from the bottom, I'll mark a third line. So now I have these 3 lines drawn, and I can separate the 2 pieces. So on my side piece, I'm just marking that top there, and I'm going to take it and I'm going to do my measurements in from the right side. So I'm going to turn it so that that top is facing me, and I'll draw a line at 3/8, and then from the outside edge here I will measure 1.25 inches, and that will give us 7/8 between those 2 lines, and you just want to double check that that's what you have, is 7/8 inches. And also I'm going to put on here, this part of the shadow box is going on the outside. The plane will face the inside. And now I'll pierce these 6 holes for my brads. Now I've pierced the 6 holes, and I'm looking at the inside, and this is the side we'll feed the brads through from. And I'm just going to score lightly around each hole and make a little square, and just kind of remove a little bit of that chipboard, not a lot, but just so that we'll be able to recess the head of that brad in there a little bit. So just make a little square around each one and remove a little bit of that chipboard. Don't press too hard, just a little layer. Just stick your tip of your craft knife in there, and you should get a nice little square to come out, just like that. And now I'll just feed those 6 brads through from the inside, and I'll just put a little drop of glossy accents underneath the head to secure it. Before my glossy accents sets up, I'll just check and make sure that each one of these is sitting at that intersection of the lines. And then I'll just set this piece aside to dry for a few minutes. And then on our side piece back, on this inside piece, we're again going to measure from the right side, so I'll flip it over so that it has the writing down here closest to me. And then I'll measure in 1 3/8, 1 3/8, and then we want to come 7/8 of an inch past that, so that is going to be 2 1/4 if you measure all the way from the left side, which should give us 7/8 here in the middle. and it does. Now this is not exactly centered here because we're allowing for the thickness of the back that we have yet to add to the shadow box. So now we can just put this piece aside for a few minutes until we're ready to build this unit. Once we have our units together and they're dry, we can glue on the top and the bottom, which should fit exactly on to the edges. So once the glossy accents on our brads has set up, we can go ahead and put these two sides on, and the side without the brads goes on the right, and it should fit edge to edge. And then just use wet glue, of course, and put that in place. And then this side with the brads, make sure the top is at the top, and it gets glued to the outside of this side, the left side. So I'll go ahead and get those attached, put some clothespin clamps on it, and allow those to dry. And then once the glue has thoroughly dried on these two side pieces, we can just add some glue to this back, which should fit exactly on the back of our shadow box. And if there's any writing, just put it towards the inside. And then we'll allow that to thoroughly dry. Now to finish off the edges of the shadow box, I've made some special finishing strips that were cut 7/8 of an inch wide, and then I scored them at 3/8 of an inch from either side, which gives me a 1/8 inch channel in the middle. And then I again prep the two sides with 3/8 inch score tape, and that'll allow a nice finished edge along these all these edges here, because the two thicknesses give us about 1/8 of an inch of chipboard. So what I'll do is just cut and kind of miter around each one of these. For example, here I've cut this bottom piece to length, and then on both the channel at this point right here, so I have it wrapped so that the 1/8 of an inch is sitting on the top, and I think you can see that miter line I drew. I'm going right from the corner, 45 in, and I'm going right from the corner 45 in on those two sides. So I'll go ahead and do that. And then I figured out where this cross piece comes in, and I'll cut it so that the 1/8 inch channel is covering the bottom piece here, but I'll just cut out a little 45-degree on either side. So let me do that and I'll show you what it looks like. So that's what it looks like, and that allows us to wrap both sides to the inside here, and then when we can just come with a squared off piece on this piece that comes this way. So I'll go ahead and finish all these top edges like that, and then the other edges I'll just use plain old finishing strips, the ones that are 3/4 of an inch wide with no channel in the middle. And I'll go ahead and get the edges of the shadow box finished off nicely. Now here's the shadow box with the edges all neatly finished off. And I'm going to wait to put decorative paper on it for two reasons. Number one, I'm going to wait and see what I'm going to put in each one of the little places, and then also to see what paper I have left over after I've finished constructing the few remaining units to the project. In this unit, we will work on the side unit. The side unit covers up the hole that the shadow box goes in and also attaches to that shadow box so that we have a way to pull it out of the house. So here on our cutting guide, on page 2 of 3 at the bottom is the medium weight chipboard that we need for this section, and all those pieces are laid out there. And then there are no templates. There is some measuring that I will talk us through, and then of course we'll need some decorative paper to finish things up, and I have my Crocodile Big Bite out here so that I can punch the holes that we need in the back piece. So let's get started. So to start with, on both of our the front and the back, we need to cut a ridge line for the roof. So I'll just pick one of them and put it on here on my grid mat, and I'm going to measure down 1 7/8 inches, 1 7/8 inches from the top, and I'll just make a line there on each side, and then I'll find center using my centering ruler and mark center up here at the top, and then I'll connect that centering mark up here at the top with the 1 7/8 inch lines on either side, and make those marks. So now I have this triangle marked out here at the top, and then on either side underneath the triangle we want to measure in 3/8 of an inch. So 3/8 of an inch, and that line stops right underneath the roof of the triangle there. And I'll repeat that on the other side, so that I end up with the body of the side unit is 3/8 of an inch in on either side, and then the roof spans the entire 3 3/4. So I'll repeat that measuring process on the front, and then I'll cut those pieces out. So this is what our pieces look like once those cuts have been made. And now I'll work just on the back for a minute, and all of these intersections that we marked for the holes, for the brads to come through, I'll use my Big Bite and reach in and punch each one of those holes. And I should say I'll use the 1/8 inch, the smaller hole, when I punch those holes. Next, still working on the back here, I'll take 2 joining strips and put them right on the inside, aligning them with the edges underneath the roof line. So I gave those 2 strips a good burnish, and my final prep on the back is to put a ledger strip on the bottom that is 1/16 inch up from the bottom, so we'll have a gluing surface for our base. Now we can work on our front, and I'm going to turn it sideways so the bottom is over here to my left, and I'm going to mark 2 lines, one at 3 inches up and one at 6 inches up from the bottom. Then I'll take my 2 little interior supports and prep them with a joining strip on one of the long sides. So here are my 2 prepped support pieces, and see how one, the joining strip is facing the bottom, and one, the joining strip is facing the top. And I'm going to attach them each on one of these lines and make sure I keep that joining strip on, for this one on the bottom and for this one on the top. And then I'll add another joining strip. For this one down here, it's going to be attached to the bottom. And for the one up here near the roof, it's attaching to the top. And I'll give all of those joining strips a good burnish. Now we're ready to prep some decorative paper. And you may recall earlier, in an earlier episode, I was using this paper for one of the main house pieces, but I reserved this piece that I cut 3 3/4 wide, and this is for what we've reserved it for, to go over here on this side piece. So because this piece is, how tall is it, 10 3/4 inches, and this is only 8, we need to make a join, and so I'll cut out another piece of this paper so I can match it up, and I only need 4 1/4, so I'll only cut that much out and match that up because I'm trying to conserve my paper. So I'll end up making a piece that needs to be as tall as this, so 10 3/4 inches, and down here this part down here only actually needs to be 3 inches wide, but that might be a little complicated, so I'm just going to match up my stripes and cut a 4 1/4 inch piece tall. That's the same width as what I already have here, and that will be for my front piece. So I'll go ahead and get that cut. So now I've created a piece that is 3 3/4 by 10 3/4, and my join is down here, and I can temporarily adhere it to my front piece and then cut out along my roof and along my 2 sides. So here's my piece for the front, and then I cut 2 strips that are 5/8 by 9 for the 2 side pieces, and then finally on my roofs I'm going to go ahead and put score tape on them and then cover them with decorative paper. So now I'll go ahead and ink all of my paper, and for the pieces that go on the main unit here, I'll prep them with score tape. Our first step in assembly is to put glue. This is the shadow box here, and we'll put glue on this end that has the brad sticking out, and then we can put our side piece, will fit right on top of those brads, and we can make sure everything is plumb. There probably is a little bit of wiggle room there because we punched these holes. They're 1/8 inch holes, so make sure everything is plumb when you put it on, and then fasten down the brads, and you can put some glossy accents underneath them. You could put a piece of cardstock with some score tape over that as well, and then of course let it thoroughly dry. So now we can join our 2 side pieces to the front piece. We'll just work around these little supports, and these are just a little bit longer than that notch that we cut out here. Just bring it up and allow it to extend into that roof area. That's okay. And yeah, so go ahead and put joining strips in these places. Then once we have our walls attached, we can go ahead and add a ledger strip down here at the base, a 1/16 of an inch up. So now we're ready to attach this to the back piece, and I'm going to start out by just removing a little bit of this score tape backing from these 2 support pieces, and using my thumbnail just to make a little flag so it'll stay down like that. And then I'm just kind of pressing on those two pieces so that the top one is hinged, staying to the top, and the bottom one is staying to the bottom. So now we're going to join the front unit and the back unit. On one side, we can just simply remove this score tape backing from the piece we put on the back and butt the side up. Keep that even, get that tight against there, and go all the way up. I'm going to have to move it so I can see to do that, but you'll join that tight in a butt joint between the back and the side piece here. Then of course you'll reach in and give that a good burnish. Make sure these guys are staying up and down. And then this final edge here, it just kisses. And hopefully you have a tool that you'll be able to reach in and burnish that. If not, we'll have a finishing strip that will come and help this stay in place. So those two corners just kiss, there's no overlapping, and we'll put those two pieces together. So now we have the side unit attached, and what we're going to do is reach in here and grab that flag of score tape backing and pull that off, and then just kind of push that support piece up so that it's laying flat in there. And do the best you can. It's just there to give a little extra help. It may not actually be necessary, so if it doesn't work, we're not out anything. So I might need to reach in there with some tweezers or pliers to get a hold of that score tape backing. And then once you've done the bottom one, you can reach in from the top and get that flag and get that burnished in. Now we can tilt this up and put some glue on the ledger strips, and put some glue around the sides here even though there's no ledger strip, and we can put some good pressure and put the base inside here. Next we can glue in our roof support pieces, but we can make our life a little bit easier. I didn't think about this until right now. If on one side you take your ledger strips and put them a 1/16 of an inch away from the edge. Do that on the front and back, but you just need to do it on one side, because the first side you can reach in easily and get it placed in the right place. And once we have those in, we can go ahead and glue in our little roof support pieces. These may not go all the way to the ends, but they're just to give us a good gluing surface and to keep everything sturdy here at the rooftop. When you're gluing on these support pieces, try not to get any glue on the inside here. If glue does get on the inside, we can always cut a piece of black cardstock to cover up any mess, because I wasn't planning on putting any decorative paper on the inside of this part that's in by the shadow box. And then after all the glue is set up, we can put finishing strips on the 4 side edges. Just go right up underneath that roof cutout piece there, and all the way to the bottom. Once we have our finishing strips on all 4 vertical edges, we can go ahead and put our decorative paper on. It gets centered left and right and should fit top to bottom, and on the sides it'll tuck up probably just a little bit underneath the roof. Once we have our decorative paper on, we can go ahead and put our windows, and we're using the same template here for the height of the windows, and I'll just make sure I get them centered on this piece. And remember, we have these just have cardstock on them, so we can just remove the score tape and there's no need for glossy accents. And then finally we have our circular window that has cardstock on the back, and we'll center it left and right, and I'm going to put it and the top of it 1 1/8 inch down from the peak. So I'm just going to make myself a little mark there, and now I can center this window. And then finally we can add our roof, and we'll take our 2 pieces. I'm just deciding how I like to see them. And then I'll put a joining strip here on the back. Now when we glue this roof on, it's important that it's flush with the back here. It'll overhang in the front a little bit, of course, but it needs to be flush on this side that's going up against the house. So I'll just put some glue on these roof support pieces and put that roof in place. And then finally I'll finish off this peak just like I've done the other ones. I'm using a little 1/16 inch piece of chipboard, or you could, if you've been using a strip of paper, you can do that as well. And that finishes off that roof line. When we do our finishing touches, we'll cover up this seam, and now you can try it inside of the house. So here's what it looks like inside of the house. And then if you want to see the shadow box, you just pull out the side unit and there's the shadow box.